All right, we're back here leading into round 2 of our Legacy event today. An oversight I forgot to mention at the beginning of the day today. So we do have about 100 players in the field. There were the five trial winners that we played out over the last couple months. Each earned 1 bye in the event. Every other player was playing in round 1. So starting in round 2, we'll now have the full field. And what we're going to talk about right now, as things are getting shaped up for the round, Anuraag, as we customarily do on our shows, we had each of us submitted a deck list that we would have played if we were in the event. I'll go ahead and go first. Let's see if we've got mine up there. And okay, so here is my Food Chain Goblins deck that I've been working on. A couple of cards have changed. If you were with us a couple months ago when I was talking through last time, we have a couple of Lightning Bolts that are primarily to kill Dreadhorde Arcanist, which has been a real nuisance. We've also increased the basic land count and adjusted the sideboard slightly. And I'm trying out Simian Spirit Guide instead of Chrome Mox as a way to similarly accelerate in small degree, but also to be able to pick off a random days, which I'm kind of excited about, although it hasn't come up yet. But basically, this deck we have 2 main routes to victory. You can win early with Goblin Lackey, just dropping a Muxus or a Ringleader or something and just wiping the opponent out. Or you can get Food Chain down and just use the natural card advantage of the Goblin creatures to just chain your way through the deck, building upon either Matron or Ringleader into Muxus, into Conspicuous Snoop, into hopefully enough of the deck to give your creatures haste and then just pulverize the opponent. It's a good time.
Tell me about it.
We'll get to that. So this is what I would play. This is obviously not a tier 1 deck, but I feel like I'm making progress and it is enjoyable to play, and it's got game. All right, so let's go ahead and look at what Anuraag would play.
And this is an exciting brew that is created by Jeff White, aka Pokimoki, who has also created another mainstay now in the Legacy format, your Pokepile with Dreadhorde Arcanist and Stifle and whatnot. But this is a 4-color snow-esque variant that leverages the power of your 3-drops alongside Noble Hierarch to churn out an early Teferi, Oko, or Narset. If you get fortunate enough to put a Hullbreacher into play, then you could maybe draw into something like Days Undoing and sort of do that sort of Time Twister effect with Narset or Hullbreacher and Prey to just make it like a one-sided ability. This is a pretty fun deck to play, I got to tell you. Like, for me, who has played a lot of Control, I really like that this you get to do crazy things with this list, right? And you still have your stock like Swords to Plowshares. You still have your Oko, Uro, Simic Soup stuff to go and just keep yourself competitive. Notable inclusions: the main deck Carpet of Flowers, just a nod to where the format is right now. Mm-hmm. Flusterstorm is an old one that we haven't seen before. But I really like this list. I've actually been able to do a lot of crazy powerful things with Days Undoing and Hullbreacher. It just feels so incredible to you put on that draw stop with your Teferi and play your Narset or your Hullbreacher and then just cast that Days Undoing and say, whoop, there goes your whole hand kind of deal. I like this list. Go ahead.
So talking about Days Undoing Hullbreacher, explain to people that maybe some of our viewers may be here for the modern part of the tournament and they're unfamiliar with some of these interactions. Explain what actually happens with Hullbreacher Days Undoing.
Yeah, sure. So Hullbreacher says, if your opponent would draw a card outside of their first card they draw in their draw step, instead they do not draw that card, and you get a treasure token, which is like a Lotus Petal, basically, right? Cool. So then Days Undoing says both players are going to Time Twister, so they're going to shuffle their hands and their graveyards into their libraries and then draw 7 cards. But because if there's a Hullbreacher or like a Narset in play, the opponent doesn't get to draw any cards off Days Undoing. So it is basically an asymmetrical Time Twister that not only gets rid of your opponent's entire hand, but also their entire graveyard. And you get a lot of mana to use on the next turn to deploy your, Okos or Uros or whatnot. I mean, let me tell you, when you have Oko in your hand and you look at 7 treasure tokens, that's when you know you can get the heat on. It's a pretty powerful feeling for sure. Not something that you usually see. So this is one thing that I want to actually point out, which is one of the reasons why I think having this sort of weird cutesy combo in the deck is important, is that There are a lot of strategies that actually just don't care about what these 4-color snow decks do. For example, we saw in the pairings earlier that, you know, the mono green ramp deck did end up beating a snow control list, and that's because when you play your Cloud Posts and your Emrakuls and whatnot, you just don't care about the Okos and the Teferis and whatnot, right? So having access to this sort of like plan B, if you will, of Days Undoing to eliminate your hand, and then, you know, have follow up with whatever it might be, is just a great way to sort of give yourself a proactive strategy that every deck needs to worry about.
Okay, so that's what Anuraag and I would enter, and you know, if you're wondering what would happen if Anuraag and I were to play in the event, we can tell you, because we actually ran into each other on Magic Online about a week ago. Anuraag actually was streaming the event, so you can actually watch it on YouTube on his channel. Which why don't you go ahead and hit people with what your channel name is while we're on topic.
Twitch.tv/OnZMTG, same as the Twitter tag. Check it out. I stream Legacy almost every day. I think I'm 320 days in a row now, so we're going for that sweet 365. Lock it in, and then good stuff.
If you find it in the archives, you would find the gentleman Anuraag here playing, you know, one of his snow control decks, actually facing down against the Food Chain Goblins. And I'm sure you could tell by my expression who won the match.
Oh man, it was not a good time, I'll tell you that much. I was like, all right, you know what? I got Food Chain Goblins. That's not even a tier 1 deck. This should be a walk in the wait, well, I'm dead.
You did cheese me out in game 2 with a very cool Torpor Orb into Uro on turn 3 that just annihilated me. But yeah.
Games 1 and 3 were not. It didn't feel very close. Game 3 was kind of close there, but that's one of the reasons why I think the Food Chain Goblins deck is so sweet, is because all your creatures just generate so much value, and then you also just have a bunch of random kill buttons like the Goblin Lackey test, right? Like, and I'm pretty sure I failed it in one of the games. It's just absurd that, you know, you can just win the game on the spot with like a number of cards in the list, like, you know, Goblin Lackey or Food Chain or whatever.
Oh, it is very fun to play. I find myself struggling against Mana Denial. Wasteland Stifle stuff sets me back quite a bit, and that makes sense because traditionally Goblin decks have Ether Vial to try and get around that and get their cards. And I don't have access to that in that list. But we're if you're just tuned in, we're shaping up round 2. I expect any moment now we're going to have deck lists and get things started. But okay, so Anuraag, how you feel about, you play Legacy, like you're saying, 320 days in a row, you play it all the time. Current stretch since the last, you know, batch of Commander Legends, Hullbreacher got printed, is Legacy in a good spot right now, or is it kind of is it struggling, or are we just kind of where we usually are?
This is a pretty controversial topic, and I'm going to give you the TLDR real quick before I, you know, go into whatever. Legacy is currently a balanced format, but I do not think it is a healthy format. Okay. So when I say it is a balanced format, I mean to say that I do not think that there is any one deck in the format that exists that can just, you know, take over like we've seen before in the past, right? Where we had counterbalanced top lists that were good, very, very clearly, you know, tier 1. We had Grixis Delver in the past that was very, very clearly tier 1. Currently, I don't think there's anything that I would say is the best deck in the format. I think that the top tier is reasonably, you know, diverse. You might make an argument for like Rug Delver, but recent stats have just like sort of disagreed with that, at least from my observations. When I say it is not a healthy format, that's when we get a little bit more subjective and a little bit more analytical on what we like and we don't like compared to, like, you know, just like the past, right? And so when I think of Legacy as a format, I think of just like all the number of beautiful interactions that you can have. You know, you've got a lot of like spell-based instant speed, you know, cards like Brainstorm, you know, Swords to Plowshares and whatnot. But I think just given the nature of recent cards that have been printed, like Oko, Uro, Dreadhorde, you know, just like the fire stuff, it's been a lot trickier to sort of leverage and, you know, have back and forth games. These cards can snowball pretty violently sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So sounds like that timed out well. We're now ready to jump in for round 2. So let's go ahead and look at our deck list players. We see Autumn Wasburn-Moses, who has been a regular in our Nerd Rage online events, playing Blue-Black or Dimir Reanimator. Now, this is a deck that's existed for a long time. Went out of style, I think would be fair to say, replaced by Red-Black Reanimator, or Black-Red, I should say. The black was obviously more important. And here we are back in Blue-Black Reanimator, which, again, is a fast deck with counter magic to back it up. A number of years ago, this would have been considered one of the most vicious combo decks in the format. How do you feel it stands up now?
Well, as I got one word for you, Joe, and that is
Yeah,
Entombsday, because
right. So I looked at the title and then just kind of went into that. And now looking more carefully, this isn't quite Blue-Black Reanimator, even though that's what we have it titled as. This is what we would have called Tin Fins. So yeah, so take us through kind of what Tin Fins or what this deck is representing here.
yeah, so this is actually an even faster variant IMO of the Blue-Black Reanimation lifestyle, where you are actually trying to leverage Dark Ritual alongside your reanimation cards like Entomb, Shallowgrave, Goryor's Vengeance. And the goal is to, get Gristlebrand into play on turn 1, and then you end up just drawing your whole deck by leveraging you pay life with Gristlebrand, and then you get Children of Corliss, we see one of in the list, to gain life, to pay life, to rinse and repeat sort of deal, right? What's especially interesting about this list is going to be the sideboard. Now, if you look at the sideboard, you'll see there are 4 copies of Doomsday in the sideboard. So essentially, this is a transformational sideboard, which, just has a completely different, game plan than the game 1, reanimation style strategy. So Doomsday is like we were mentioning earlier, one of the more premier combo decks in the format right now, thanks to one of the recently printed cards, Thassa's Oracle. You can see it at the top of the sideboard there. And Thassa's Oracle is a unique merfolk. It is blue for a 1/3, so it's not very powerfully statted. But what it does say is that when it ETBs, when it enters the battlefield, you can look at the top cards of your library equal to the amount of devotion you have to blue, so the number of blue mana sources you have in play. And if your devotion to blue is equal to the number of cards in your deck, or the number of cards is lower, you win the game on the spot there. So this card literally just ends games in a very tight fashion.
Yeah, okay, so it has the transformational Doomsday plan, like you're saying. Let's go ahead and look at Adam's opponent, Jack Potter, playing green-white lands. This is a deck that's lands has existed for a long time. This variant is probably capped out at maybe like a year or so, and then on top of that, we see some new cards, like the Skyclave Apparitions that you referred to beforehand. We have a Dryad of the Elysian Grove, which kind of enables Valakut in a deck with no mountains, so we're kind of cheating on that, but it's a very effective deck that we also see in Modern. And we see Field of the Deads. We see this is kind of a value-oriented deck that builds pressure over time that's kind of hard to stop. I'm guessing that it's going to struggle against the Reanimator list.
Yeah, so first off, I'd like to just say,
let me go off right there. I understand that we actually we received half of the wrong pairing. So so we are going to see apologize. Just take a sec. Let me take 10 seconds to figure this out.
Sure thing. Yeah. In the meantime, I'll just talk about this list a little bit. Shout out to Francisco Paulitz for sort of innovating this archetype in Legacy. I think this is, like you mentioned, Joe, sort of a port from Modern. And while this may not necessarily be what we see in the upcoming match, this is basically your sort of Elvish Reclaimer, Maverick style strategy that leverages the power of the recently printed, I think, M20, the 1/2. You combine it with a card like Flagstones of Trocaire to sort of ramp your mana base into powerful spells like Primeval Titan or, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, combined with something like Valakut.
Okay, so let's go back. So we are going to see the Adams Reanimator deck, but we had the opponent wrong. He's actually going to be playing against Topher Stetson on Depths, which is a different lands focused deck. We'll bring that up for you once we have it shortly. See there. Okay, so here is the Dimir Tin Fins deck, which, like Anuraag was pointing out, has the transformational sideboard plan into basically just a one-shot kill with Doomsday. Hope the opponent can't deal with it. And he's going to be playing against Hofer Stitson, playing Green-Black Depths. Apologize for the error there. If you have any hate mail, you can address it to Max Khan. And we see the Green-Black Depths, which is another traditional Legacy deck. Why don't you take us through the basic functioning of that?
Yeah.
All right, let's not do that. Let's just go ahead and go right down to the match. As we see things starting to develop here, sorry, this was kind of a cluttered round. Now, Anuraag, why don't you go ahead and briefly take us through kind of the point of the Depths deck as the early turns are developing.
Yeah, sure. So look at this already. This is exactly the combo that we were talking about here, where you've got, your Dark Ritual, your Entomb, your Shallow Grave to bring back the Gristlebrand. The Gristlebrand is going to have haste. You can attack, pay life, draw a bunch of cards. I mean, this is a great feeling. Look at all these cards that are in, Adam's hand right now.
Yeah, this is
yeah, I'm pretty powerful here. I mean, like,
yeah, I mean, this game is just ending. Okay, so all right, let's
that's actually quite incredible that the game, literally, if you looked at Adam's timer, 39:08, so it took less than 60 seconds of gameplay from one side to end the game here. But basically, yes, this was one of the ways to also end the game here that I forgot to mention earlier, which is that, you can entomb Emrakul, and then with the Emrakul trigger in the stack, because when it goes to the graveyard, it shuffles back in, you can just like reanimate it at instant speed with the Goryo's Vengeance or Shallow Grave to attack.
Yeah, so we saw kind of the brutal end of that, which is what this deck is trying to do. There still seems to be some confusion as to the players or the... Well, something is wrong. Let's just... we have the... we have the wrong name. So this isn't Jack Potter, because that was the... So the name on the screen is wrong. But, well, now we can actually see it is Jack Potter. So we had the deck list wrong for Mr. Potter, I guess, was the issue.
Okay.
Yeah, we had the right opponent name. We just had the deck list loaded incorrectly. So at least that minor bit is straightened out. We do know actually the players' names. So that's not too bad for halfway through a round.
Yeah. I think looking at reevaluating, it actually does appear that we might be playing against the original list that we were talking about, that green-white reclaimer list here. Okay. As we go into game two, just really quickly want to shout out the sideboarding here, where we're bringing in this alternate plan here of Doomsdays. So we got the 4 Doomsdays. We have the small compact Doomsday package that is Edge of Autumn, Thassa's Oracle, 1 copy of Predict, shout outs to that, and then a couple extra cards in the form of Street Wraith to just cycle through your Doomsday pile. I guess the Echoing Truth is just like sort of anti-interaction, that sort of thing. Hate for that kind of thing. So I like bringing the Echoing Truths in as well, just in case. I mean, you see like in Jack's sideboard, there's copies of Spirit of the Labyrinth. That's going to be pretty powerful against something like a Gristlebrand, or like a Doomsday pile where you want to draw through all your cards on the same turn here.
Yeah. And, so it does appear that the initial matchup that we portrayed actually turned out to be the correct one. So we were waylaid by our updated information, which took us off path. But anyway, so we do have the original matchup that we expected, which we do think massively favors the combo deck.
Yeah, I would say that if I were a betting person, I would definitely put money on the combo side of things here. I just love how this deck gets to hit you with the left jab in game 1, but then can come out with a surprise, strategy in game 2 here. And I mean, this is paying off here, because take a look at the hand that, Adam has here on the draw in game 2, right? We see Dark Ritual and Doomsday. That's it. That's all you need. That's the tweet, right? So pretty powerful here. And you even have a copy of Edge of Autumn to kickstart the process on the next turn here. I also really like that, we've got a lot of disruption in the hand already with Collective Brutality, being able to either duress or, just handle any problematic creatures. And then also Thoughtseize if you're really feeling like you want to take it slow and play a more controlling role.
Okay, so, and we see here now that Adam is looking at this Doomsday plan, he is visiting Jack's deck list to see what can Jack actually do to break up what I'm going to bring to the table this game.
Yeah.
That counts.
That does it.
Deafening Silence, a 1-mana enchantment, which players can only play 1 non-creature a turn. This kind of blows up Dark Ritual entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Looking at the rest of Jack's hand that looked like it might have been that was a mulligan to 6, but it's a great 6.
Spirit of the Labyrinth coming down now. There's a Wasteland also there in hand to handle the Underground Sea. And that top deck snow-covered swamp is actually just an insane draw here. Fortunately for Adam, though, Collective Brutality in play or in hand means that we could handle the Spirit of the Labyrinth. But this is actually kind of exciting here. We're going to see just passing the turn here. Maybe on the end step, we wanted to, Echoing Truth here? A Collective Brutality is a sorcery, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So, no, you're right about that. So that is a little curious. Well, I think the Echoing Truth is going to have to the Deafening Silence. So, yeah, I guess the plan is to ignore the Spirit of the Labyrinth, bounce the Deafening Silence, and then just try and do what he can. But the Underground Sea is going to go now. Okay, now this. I feel comfortable saying that this actually was a misstep, because if this Wasteland had been fired off before the second Spirit was cast, the Deafening Silence could have been recast.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure where I lie on this, because, the second Spirit of the Labyrinth is pretty good here. I mean, it does fall prey to Echoing Truth. Echoing Truth actually has the ability to bounce not just one permanent, but multiple if they share the same name. So if you target the Spirit of the Labyrinth, you'll actually get to bounce that and all other Spirit of the Labyrinths here. And Chromox might be a good draw here. It's a little bit tricky, because you have to do something this turn. The Deafening Silence otherwise would just end the game. The Deafening Silence would just come back down next turn and slow you, for the duration of whatever's going on. So I'm kind of curious. What do you do here?
Yeah, so the Edge of Autumn was cycled off of the Wastelanded land because it's free. But did we need that for our Doomsday pile to break into the pile a little bit sooner? No, I guess we couldn't because of the Spirit of Labyrinth anyway. This is okay. So, kind of backtracking here. Yeah, I do think the Wasteland was maybe timed poorly, but it may not matter, as this Spirit of the Labyrinth is still going to be disruptive on the entrance of the Doomsday pile, even if it's able to be hard cast now. This clock is not so fast. It will be a passive from pile, and Force of Will is not the draw.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's very important, though, about the card Doomsday is that it does actually round your life total down by half. So if you cast the Doomsday on this board state, right, you go down to 10, Doomsday resolves, you will actually, half your life total, you go down to 5, and then that's where the second Spirit of the Labyrinth was looking pretty scary here. So basically the power of, Jack's draw was high enough that maybe that sequencing issue that you mentioned earlier didn't actually matter. On this board state, though, I got to wonder, maybe... Well, it's not over just yet. I mean, Jack only has one card in hand, and you could technically draw something like Collective Brutality. You could put that in your pile to sort of handle the onboard threat. But with the Deafening Silence in play, you're actually just going to have to wait a couple turns, naturally draw cards, since actually that's not even true. Spirit of the Labyrinth is slowing down the card draw, but if you are able to handle that with your pile, then, you could just go cycle Edge of Autumn into Street Wraith into Thassa's Oracle, keeping in mind that Doomsday is able to pick up cards from your graveyard and put them into your 5-card pile.
Right, so this may be recoverable. I mean, the clock here from Jack is, there is going to be another turn for Adam, but it is going to be tough to navigate because the hate cards are both going to have to be dealt with. The just draw through your deck route to victory with the Oracle isn't going to work because there's not enough turns. Let's see I'm curious to see how this is going to work. And Doomsday pile, this is why Doomsday is complicated, because it's effectively a 5-card tutor, and that takes a lot to navigate. But we can see the selections here: Predict, Underground Sea, Collective Brutality, Edge of Autumn, and the Oracle. I believe with the 5, the Oracle was the one selected already to be the last one, which is generally where you'd want it.
Yep. And Collective Brutality going to go on top of the deck here. Spirit of the Labyrinth going to attack for 3, put Adam down to 2 here. So basically almost any creature that Jack is going to be able to find off the top of the deck will be likely enough to end the game here, because Deafening Silence is in play. You're probably not going to die if your opponent will cast the Collective Brutality. Yeah, you won't be. There has to be a way to draw into the cards. So just another piece of the puzzle is that when you resolve Doomsday, you do get to create the perfect 5-card deck to win the game on that turn or maybe the next turn. But you need to keep in mind that they're still in the deck, right? So you have to find a way to draw them to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, so if Jack has a threat here, that let's see, and that's not going to be enough to win the game because the brutality actually is able to gain life here because the force of will can be pitched. So the Adam checking out how much trouble this reclaimer is going to be, but I'm not sure he has a choice because I think the spirit has to die.
yeah, I agree with you. Yep. Kill the spirit, and then you can untap and win the game next turn here.
As long as this reclaimer doesn't make a mess of things, which it might. Now, Jack doesn't know the order that Adam has put his deck in, but let's see, would a Wasteland even be enough? Because the cards that Adam needs to be able to cast are Predict and Thassa's Oracle, correct? So a Wasteland on the Underground Sea might just be enough.
Oh, there's a Once Upon a Time. Okay.
All right.
Something like a Thalia might be able to do it as well. Oh, and that's another Spirit of the Labyrinth.
My goodness. Okay, so that's definitely bad news for Adam, as this is going to mean that the Predict is not going to be able to draw cards on Adam's own turn, shutting off any route to victory. And I believe the route was there. Predict into Oracle would have gone through Deafening Silence and won the game, but it's not to be. And Jack will even up the match. So good for him as we head towards game 3. And I think we're going to try and switch perspectives on the players. You can see our screen isn't quite shaped up the way it's intended to be. But if we... All right, we're going to go ahead and look at Jack's deck listing because we kind of gave it short shrift originally, and then we'll see if we can perhaps step into the other player's point of view for game 3 so that we can get the scene framed up correctly for you. So Green White Lands pulled out game 2 on the back of a lot of Spirit of Labyrinth. In fact, did we see all of them?
We actually did, right? One died, one was found at the very last turn, and there was one that came into play very early. So I want to give a special shout out to Spirit of the Labyrinth. I think that one's a very powerful card, but really quickly looking at the sideboard, I see a lot of disruptive pieces, Fairy Macabre and Deafening Silence. Alongside the Thalias, I think those are going to be the primary cards to see from the sideboard going into game 3.
And Deafening Silence, not just a 1-up, there's 3 of them there. That's significant and not something that I think that you would see every day. Thoughtseize here to lead off from Adam and get game 3, the final game of the match, going. And there's some relevant choices here. Deafening Silence seems scarier, but Fairy Macabre's no picnic either.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in Jack's side of the table here, I'm a little bit nervous, right? Because the Deafening Silence will slow down, a bit of what's going on here. We sort of saw that in the last game, Adam actually had a line that was able to beat Deafening Silence here. But I have to imagine that when you switch from the play or from the draw to the play, playing a deck like this Tinfin's and Tombsday list, that you probably sort of speed up the pace of play in game 3 and try to go for something busted here. And I mean, this game could be over. There's still 4 cards. Something as simple as Dark Ritual, Entomb, Shallow Grave would put Gristlebrand into play, but it looks like a pass the turn. Okay.
All right. So the coast is clear now with nothing coming there. If there's a 1-mana kill, obviously the game would be over right now. So there isn't. So do you Wasteland or do you play the Silence?
Oh, I am all about not dying in this matchup, so I would slam that Deafening Silence with the Swiftness. The Wasteland is a reasonable line too. Their mana on the other side of the table is not that clean. Like we sort of saw how Wasteland early sort of put that deck in a position where you had to put like another Underground Sea into your pile just to play around it and stuff like that. And even like slowed down, just development in general to begin with. But shields need to be up. I think we just need to put the Deafening Silence into play because of that explosive potential that is on the other side of the table. I wouldn't take the risk.
Sure. Well, let's see if Jack's willing to take the risk.
Yeah. And I think this is actually a very tricky decision to make here. It really does come down to knowing how the matchup plays out and what you expect out of the other opponent's deck. maybe like knowing how their deck works, would impact. But honestly, now that I think about it, even on this turn 2 here, I'm still probably not interested in wastelanding yet, right? I like this play. I like not wastelanding here, and I really want to see the Green Sun Zenith come down and pick up an Elvish Reclaimer. Get the namesake card of the deck. I think it just needs to get into play and start doing things.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
wow,
dazed. That's painful, as you can clearly see. Jack doesn't have a whole lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the anti-brainstorm club kind of deal where like you just don't have the consistency options. Well, you do have cards like Green Sun Zenith, and like if you are lucky enough to draw Sylvan Library, boom, that's also a pretty good one there too. The days, I mean, yeah, like this is pretty crazy here. Solid draw.
Yeah, allowing time to fire off the wasteland also. So afterwards, so at second days doesn't ruin Jack's day, but yeah, I mean, Adam didn't have anything to do on 3 mana, so his wasteland feels like it's probably a Time Walk effect, but hold things up here. We see Echoing Truth on the Deafening Silence. Did this? Oh boy! So we had the repeat scenario of the other game where Deafening Silence gets bounced and unable to be recast in response to a wasteland. This time, I think the sequencing makes perfect sense from Jack's side, but it is unfortunate for him the way that worked out. And Adam has a free turn here.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Adam's not slamming cards on the table already, so I think this may have been one of those like I don't have enough mana for the next few turns, so I'm going to try to Echoing Truth here. Maybe draw that one last piece that I'm missing, right? So we might have a portion of the combo, but not the whole combo, and this might be an attempt to just like, get lucky and cheese out a win here on this turn. That being said, if Jack gets to untap mana going into the next turn, we can redeploy this Deafening Silence and we can lock down Adam one more time, saying, hey, you want to do crazy things? This card stops you from doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, we could potentially see multiple hate cards come down if the Sylvan Library turns up anything. We see Chrome Mox, not a card I would generally say that you would play preemptively, so we may be looking for... No, it is just pass. Okay.
Makes sense. Under anticipation of the Deafening Silence coming back down, I could definitely see.
Right, that makes sense. Not an exciting set of cards on the Sylvan Library.
Bojuka Bog is like the kind of card that you're excited about, but not necessarily in this fashion, right? You don't want it in your hand.
Right. And so I guess we'll see. I guess you play Once Upon a Time first, but I think no matter what you find, you're playing Deafening Silence anyway.
That's an interesting one here too, right? One clue that really terrifies me is that we actually slid an Entomb under the Chrome Mox, which might mean that there is another Entomb somewhere in Adam's hand. What is this? We're tapping mana though.
This is main phase, so this is okay. So there's Doomsday, and this is the one spell for the turn.
Okay.
So Adam is setting up and potentially at the mercy of whatever comes off the top of Jack's deck between the Once Upon a Time and the following 3 cards. But Jack has currently sitting on nothing, and presumably he will need something as Adam is... Doomsday often, when it's not going to... I mean, sometimes it wins the turn, the cast Doomsday. That's very unlikely to happen here with Deafening Silence on the board. But Adam's presumably going to be setting up a win for next turn, if it's at all possible.
Yeah, I think there are going to be a couple considerations from Adam's side, which is, what can my opponent play on the next turn, and how will that, stop me from winning the game here, right? So, for example, a fresh Wasteland, because keeping in mind, Jack is about to look at the top 3 cards and can draw all 3 of them, if they so choose to pay the life. So cards like Wasteland are going to be a problem. Cards like Spirit of the Labyrinth, which we saw 3 copies of, are going to be a problem. I kind of expect this to be a pretty slow pile, just given that you already have a Deafening Silence in play. You having to answer that card and then also combo off is kind of a tall order with so few resources. So this will probably be a pass the turn a couple times pile, and then hope to get it.
Yeah. It's a shame that the Shellduck Isle plan, which is a great way to win off a pass the turn pile, isn't really safe against a deck with Elvish Reclaimer and Wastelands. And I think at least for game 2, it wasn't even in the 60. But that's a route. When I played Doomsday a long time ago, that was a very cool way to have a kind of a backup win, was just Shelldock into the business. But we're not going to see that here, I wouldn't think. One, I wouldn't think it would get boarded back in. Two, I don't think it'd be safe anyway.
Yeah, Shelldock Isle used to be one of the better, one of the go-to Doomsday plans where you'd resolve your Doomsday and then have like Shelldock Isle and Emrakul in your 5-card pile and leverage that to win the game here. Now, I mean, Thassa's Oracle has kind of just like outclasses this strategy altogether, but because you are playing Emrakul already in your deck for the Entomb Goryo's Vengeance, Shallow Graves-esque strategy, I think it makes sense to keep the Shelldock Isle somewhere in the deck just as another line to sort of just like leverage with your Doomsday when you don't necessarily have the full suite of Doomsday cards to combat whatever is going on here.
All right, so we are waiting for Adam to straighten out his pile, which can take some time. We do watch our tournaments on Nerd Rage Gaming with a forced perspective. As you can see, we watch it from one player's point of view. The idea being that this increases the tension and the drama that you would lose by having full information of what's going on. It also allows you to kind of play from the seat of, in this case, Jack Potter, and see exactly what he's seeing as he plays out his games. Now the Doomsday is resolved, which has the byproduct of exiling the rest of the deck. So Jack can see everything that Adam doesn't have in the pile.
Yeah. And you can almost reverse engineer what might be in that 5-card pile here. There's a lot of cards in exile right now. I think I would just imagine now that the Doomsday is resolved, we're kind of on a clear coast here to sort of just cast that once upon a time. And, this is going to be a lot of looks at something relevant like a Spirit of the Labyrinth or some other sort of disruptive piece there. That was pretty fast, actually. Jack's concluded, this is what I want. And this did not necessarily deliver Dryad and Elvish Reclaimer.
Right. This is not the best. And again, Jack doesn't know what he needs to disrupt here. Like, if there's a potential, it would have been interesting if the choice of like Wasteland versus Spirit of the Labyrinth, what do you take? But we didn't see that. And this was, given that there were 8 cards looked at, I would say that Jack was fairly unfortunate there in how that developed.
I actually agree with you. Yeah, this is
You actually agree with me. That didn't sound like very positive endorsement.
Well, more along the lines of that I don't actually have that much experience with these kind of strategies, and my gut intuition suggests or is leaning in that direction. So, that being said, Swords to Plowshares, not the all-star in this kind of matchup here, but maybe we can cross the finish line if we pick up maybe a Valakut or something like that off the Dryad, and we can attack for 2 points and
the swords can be relevant if the Thassa's Oracle kill is attempted with more than an empty deck.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's effectively useless here. But Spirit of the Labyrinth off the top, that on the other hand is good.
That's what we want.
Jack does keep the extra card to have the Wooded Foothills, so he can shuffle and get a new set of Sylvan Library cards next turn. I like that choice. And the Dryad can come in here. I think Adam's life total is unlikely to matter, but there's no reason not to try and push through the damage. And actually, I guess the second Dryad could allow a lethal attack on the next turn.
Yeah, this is a little bit nerve-wracking because I'm looking at the exile pile right now, and one card that I don't see in the pile, I see 2 Street Wraiths in there, but the Edge of Autumn, that's the one that I don't see. And if there's a way to draw that last card, we might just be able to beat a removal spell, but we're going to also need a mana source here. And
there we go. Fetch land is a way to remove the last card from the deck. So fetching up a blue mana source here, casting Thassa's Oracle, Swords of Plowshares will not stop that.
Wow, this is a really good pile here. And Thassa's Oracle. So just to clarify on the way this interaction works is Thassa's Oracle will check on resolution, how many blue sources or what my devotion to blue is. Currently, there would be 2, but if you source to Plowshares it would be 0, right? And the way Thassa's Oracle is worded is that if it doesn't have to necessarily be less than, it can also be tied to. So if you have no cards in your deck and no blue sources on the battlefield, or blue symbols on the battlefield, I'm sorry, well, that equals it, and that's going to be enough for the Thassa's Oracle to win the game.
And that is, I feel like that is why Thassa's Oracle has proved to be so enabling of Doomsday, as this is a very difficult thing to interact with. You saw there was removal for the win condition, and it didn't matter. Sometimes the Doomsday deck searches up Cavern of Souls, and then the counterspells for the win condition, again, don't matter. So Doomsday is a difficult deck. It has a lot of potential lines. It can go a lot of different ways, and sometimes you get put on the spot, and you have to put together a 5-card pile that can beat whatever hate you're potentially facing. And in this case, Adam's able to do it and take down the match.
Yeah, I really like the creativity and how we used the fetch land to sort of draw an extra card in quotes. But yeah.
Yeah. So our backup match did already complete, so we don't have a second match for you this round. But let's go ahead and look at the pairings and see where we're currently at, as far as we can see which matches are finished, who's playing, how things are shaking out. We see Edgar Magalash with Timur Delver did beat Greg Dyer's Mono Blue combo. We saw Greg Dyer in our previous Legacy event playing the Mono Blue deck also.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty hype match. Both very talented players. Greg Dyer, a.k.a. Funky Monkey on Magic Online. Super talented Mono Blue combo player, one of the most terrifying ones out there. I also noticed Sam Dams, a.k.a. Fenris Cloud. That is an old name if you are attached to the Legacy format. Unfortunately, losing 0-2 with Bant Infect, but I've seen Sam play, and I got to say, Sam is one of the best Infect players out there. Any other names? Brandon Burton on Sneak and Show still in match. Dom Harvey 2-0 over Elves.
Ricardo Sanchez, who won our Modern trial a month ago, here playing Legacy with Band Control, unfinished for the round. That'll be interesting to see whether he has Legacy chops to go alongside his proven Modern success. Let's go ahead and flip to the next page. See what we've got. We see Will Kruger, who won our Legacy trial, has won this round with Rug Delver again, same deck, same result.
Michael Bonde on Azorius Bomberman. Now, I saw this in the earlier round, and I was really hyped up about this. I think this deck is super interesting, to be totally honest. I mean, losing 1-2, unfortunately, to the Teamer Menace, but Azorius Bomberman is an archetype that I think has recently just seen a lot of success at the hands of Magic Online user Canacan. Sweet deck, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Let's see who else. I mean, there's obviously several recognizable names here. Catherine Savino, who had played Eldrazi in some of our earlier events during the summer, and then I don't think we saw her during the standard events, but is back for the Modern Legacy event, still playing Reanimator versus Mono Green Ramp.
Mm-hmm. Nathan Stoyer 2-0, and then Sam Rolfe as well, picking up wins there.
Mono Red Tempo loses again, so we may not end up seeing that one. And we see Fabrizio Anteri, who won our standard trial, and I believe stated that he had played something like 2 matches of Legacy in his life.
Oh, wow.
But that was a month ago. Maybe he got himself into shape. He's here. He's battling against Andrew Fiedler this round. Results still to be seen. We see Justin Brickman, Nerd Rage local, longtime player, and sometime employee of the store, wins this round. 4-color Snowco over Simic Merfolk. All right, so that kind of summarizes where we're at as far as round 2. We still have a number of matches playing, as you can see. So we're going to step away for a few minutes, and we'll be back for round 3 momentarily.